We are in a sermon series on the book of Ephesians. And Ephesus, this is part 2. The first week we did chapter 2. The second week we did chapter 3. Last week we did chapter 4. But 4 has so much in it that this week we're going to do the second part of chapter 4. The part I really like about it is this is a picture of the Colosseum that they had in Ephesus. It's a beautiful space. Acoustically, it's perfect. It could hold 25,000 people. And those people, we've been there, and you see where the folks are standing down on the stage area. When they would speak in a normal voice, you could hear them to the very top of the arena. Outdoor acoustics without any kind of amplification. It was miraculous. Ephesus was an important city in Asia Minor. It was a place that did a lot of commerce. People traveled from all over the world. Their products passed through the village, through the city. And Paul, when he's writing to the church in Ephesus, has some things he wants to say. And I happen to think that Ephesians 4 is probably one of the most significant chapters in the Bible. It has so many healthy things to say, and I want to spend some time, week 2, looking at chapter 4. The first one we're going to look at today is, let us no longer be infants tossed back and forth. Now, I don't know about you. Is that a great picture or what? I've met so many people in my career, 49 years of being a pastor, who the last time somebody went to a Bible study was in 9th grade when they were in confirmation. How many of us would be satisfied with using the telephones that we had when we were in 9th grade? I would be satisfied because I would understand more how it works, but bottom line is, the key for me is Paul was telling the church in Ephesus, grow up. The expectation is that you don't stay an infant. You don't stay a little child. That you study God's Word, that you have an opportunity to learn more about what God intended for life and for faith. And I think what's helpful is that there will no longer be infants tossed back and forth. When we're expected to grow up, I had the experience of a fellow in my life who was very instrumental. His name was Carl Dirk. He was the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship advisor for Penn State. And he would come to our campus, and he was one that would, Mark, you have a lot of potential. Mark, you could do more. Mark, you should consider going into seminary. Mark, you should do, and all of these things were new to me. I'd never thought about seminary. I'd never considered it. It was one of those things that when Carl was telling me it was important to do, that it made sense to me. And as my career would unfold, I would take the time to go to seminary, not once, not twice, but 3 times, because I was a slow learner. But each of those times I went, I realized what Carl had told me as an undergrad were very true. We're meant to continue to grow. We're never done growing, no matter what our age. We're never done growing in faith. Then he gives us some practical advice. There's going to be 5 different pieces of practical advice. The first one is, instead, speaking the truth in love. This verse, Ephesians 4:15, is very important to me because I spent 3 years going through this verse over and over. It was the verse that was a part of my doctoral thesis at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. So I spent so much time because my projects were based on staff evaluations. telling each other the truth in love, giving people accurate information, letting them know what they're doing well. You're doing a good job here, a really good job there. You could improve on this and this, but I'm really glad that you're working on. And that was the formula that was recommended over and over through my studies on evaluations. Affirmation, constructive feedback, affirmation. Affirmation, constructive feedback, affirmation. When we tell the truth in love, what we're able to do is to give folks accurate information, accurate feedback, accurate understanding of what we perceive to be going on. And the beauty of it is that as we share that with one another, we grow. It helps us do what Paul told us to do. Keep growing. Don't stay the same. Don't be stagnant. Be willing to continue to grow. We need accurate feedback, and we want to be able to give accurate feedback. The second practical piece of advice, he says, in your anger, do not sin. Now, there's two things that are important here. The emotion of anger is not a sin. It's okay to be angry. Anybody here never been angry? We know something happens when we're experiencing anger. What is it? It creates energy. That's why when we get really angry, we slam doors and we throw things and we get so demonstrative. Why? Because anger creates energy within us. Now, the sin part comes when that energy that we get from our anger causes us to hurt someone else or to hurt ourselves. That's when we've sinned. When there's a destructive outcome to the anger, then we've sinned. We've used our anger in a way that was not helpful. But Paul was giving the church in Ephesus permission to feel the emotion of anger. Yes, you will have that swelling up of energy, but slam the door, don't hit the person. You can yell, but make sure what you're saying is not destructive to them or to yourself. Get the anger energy out. Find creative ways of doing it. I had a roommate in college that every time he got angry, he'd do push-ups. Guy was built like a truck. But he took the anger energy that he received and did push-ups until he couldn't do any more, and then he got big muscles and he was tired. That's a creative use of the anger energy. The sinful use of it is when we say things or do things that are destructive to other people or to ourselves. So Paul's advice was, okay to be angry, but use the energy to do something positive for yourself or others so that you don't sin. A third practical piece of information, Paul says, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. What I think he's letting people know is, don't let anger fester. When anger festers inside of us, it's destructive. We can't let it go. It keeps eating away at us. It's difficult to handle. And his point was, when the sun goes down, you should have worked through your anger enough so that you're not just settled inside going through the night. I remember meeting a family one time that did not take Paul's advice, and they had not talked to their relatives in 12 years. I'm pretty sure they've long since forgotten what caused the rift, but they were making their point. They should know. Absolutely, they should know. Really? 12 years wasted, while the energy inside of them was being destructive to them and certainly destructive to the person that they were exhibiting this anger to. So Paul's advice was, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Deal with it. As much as you are able to confront it, give it, share it, confess it. Hey, I'm feeling really angry with you and I'd like to get it off my chest. Can we talk? Can we find a way to make this less painful for you or for me? Paul's advice was, each day should be a day that you pay attention to what your feelings are. And as that day goes through, if you're not resolved, at least to the best of your ability, sometimes it means writing it down so you get it out of you onto a piece of paper or into something else, so that you're not just replaying it, replaying it, replaying it, replaying it. It's not helpful to you or to anyone else. There's a fourth practical piece of advice that Paul gives. Get rid of bitterness, rage, and anger. Cause healthy attitudes and actions. A number of years ago, remember there was a fad that came through Christianity, WWJD. What would Jesus do? I always thought, what a simple thing. Why didn't I think of that? I could have retired. What would Jesus do? And I've often thought about that in terms of this text. When we feel those emotions of bitterness, rage, and anger, what's a healthy response to that? Jesus could have been very frustrated, must have been very frustrated with his disciples. Especially when he tells them he's going to suffer and they go, oh, no, we won't let you suffer, Jesus. And Jesus says, you guys. Or how about the time that they feed 5,000 people and then the next day they're on the other side of the lake and they're another big crowd and they say, oh, how are we going to feed everybody? Were you paying attention? Did you notice yesterday that we fed 5,000? Hello, lights on, anybody home? And the answer is no, their lights were on, but there was nobody home. Jesus must have been terribly frustrated with what he was experiencing from his disciples, not getting the picture, not understanding what they needed to follow through with. But Paul's advice in getting rid of the bitterness and rage is part of helping you, helping me. Because once again, those are the things that eat away on the inside. Those are the things that cause us to have not only a heartburn, but it can be ulcers or it can have physical manifestations. But more importantly, it hurts relationships. It's hard to be in relationship when we're bitter with them or we're raging at them inside, if not externally. Paul's advice is get rid of it. Make sure that you are in a place that reflects Jesus. Because everything we do and everything we say in the heat of any moment or in the fun of any moment is a reflection on Jesus. We as Jesus' disciples may be the only Bible people ever read. And they'll look at our actions and how we treated them and say, is that what Jesus would have done? So for me, the exciting part is it is possible to get rid of bitterness. It is possible to get rid of rage in constructive ways. And Paul encourages the church in Ephesus to do it. The fifth practical piece of advice, be kind and compassionate and forgive each other. Kind and compassionate and forgive each other. I go by the definition that forgiveness is giving a person another chance. Forgetting is divine. We may not forget what somebody said or did. We may not forget what caused the rift. But if we give them another chance, then we have forgiven them. We just haven't forgotten. And one of the greatest experiences in your life will be thinking back on a time when somebody you were really raging at, and you can't quite remember why you were so mad. That's divine intervention when we forget what caused the rift, what caused the pain. The beauty is, be kind and compassionate and forgive each other just as God has forgiven us. You've been forgiven. We've all needed forgiveness. I've been forgiven. I've needed forgiveness. And when we recognize that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. I'm getting rid of the pain. I'm getting rid of the sadness. I'm getting rid of the anger. I'm getting rid of the rage. When I get rid of those, guess who benefits? You do. You have a better experience in life because those things are gone. So now you can see why I think Ephesians 4 is one of the finest chapters in the whole Bible. Because it's got a lot of practical things to say for you and for me. And how we can live life as disciples of Jesus, as followers of what God has called us to be. Ephesians 4 is one of those places I go back periodically just to check how I'm doing. And when I realize what God has done in my life, I can be grateful for God will continue to do those things in my life in the future. And I offer you the same assurance. God will do the same for you as he's done for me. Thanks be.